Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS, here with another audiobook review. This time we're doing Prelude to Foundation, Isaac Asimov's prequel book to the Foundation, the first one of his prequel books. So he published this later in 1988. It's narrated by Scott Brick, who does an amazing job at the narration, as always. And this book covers young Harry Sheldon as he's first creating psychohistory. And so it starts out, we're in the reign of Emperor Cleon I. So you might recall there, if you've seen the show on Apple TV, they had the whole Klingon dance. Yeah, there's Klingon Emperor the first, and he's the last. Like that's, it doesn't. It's one of those things where it's a name only. This is a completely different scenario. And I really think that this time period, because it spends so much time on Harry Seldom, would have been the better area to cover and adapt as a TV show. Now, Seldom travels to Trantor because he wants to present his paper. He wants to make his mark on the mathematical community. And there's this Trantor's the capital city. It's basically Coruscant. It's a giant planet. It's all city. And the only place that there's any garden area is in the Emperor's Palace. That's the only place of actually unexposed land. Everything else is skyscrapers up thousands of feet to the point where the sky isn't even visible. They've actually got a dome that they've built to control the temperature. So Seldom presents this paper, and he thinks it's just like this unique thought query about how we could use math to predict the future. He has 1,000 reasons why it won't work, but it's just he wants to make his mark on the mathematical community. However, there's a lot of political upheaval, and the moment you say that you're making something that is creating a way to predict the future using math, everybody wants to use this. So first he gets Emperor Cleon, pulls him to come in for a personal viewing. And this really scares him to death because, you could walk away getting beheaded or, promoted or whatever. But, he's very frustrated because everybody says, you can do this. Now, he leaves there and he gets mugged. And he is saved by Chester Hammond, who informs him that these muggers were sent by Ito Demerzel, the first minister, basically the emperor's, attack dog, but that he's actually possibly even more powerful than the emperor. He's someone not to be messed with, and he is pretty much the boogeyman of this book. And we're going to keep this light spoilers, so we're going to talk about the basic plot, but like the big, huge plot twist points, I'm going to save that later in the video. I'm going to do a spoiler section. So he convinces Harry that, you need to come under my protection. I can help you, this reporter, Chester Hammond. And so he first says, okay, we're going to put you in the university. We're going to make you a professor there in the university, and there's going to be a lot of pomp and status. And the emperor can't get his military in there, because if the military came into there, it would be political suicide. So they put him there, and he teams up with historian Doris Vanellope. And she's not only a historian, she is his guardian. And, he kind of, but we'll find out later that there was a point to that. Now, he's there for quite a while. He's getting very frustrated. He realizes that history is something he's really going to have to learn to make psychohistory work. And so he realizes he's inept at that. But Doris is a historian. So they start working together. But then they have an incident where he has an attempt on his life. And that makes him worried that they think that it's a Demerzel. So Hammond moves him again. And that's when they become to the Mycogen sector, which there are people who greatly values and prides themselves on having great historical records, but they use old-fashioned books, not the new data books. but they don't accept any form of body hair. It's a religious thing. They're completely plucked everywhere, and you find hair offensive. And they also see everything on Trantor, because there's no farming. It's all made in vats, and the Mycogen sector says that they're grown vat food or whatever. Their spices, they pride themselves in the best. They're also very sexist. The men and the women can't just socialize and talk with one another. So it's a very interesting place. It's very difficult for them to adapt to that. Outside of the food, there's not a lot of benefits. However, they're also very religious, and they actually are worshiping robots. Which is funny, because this is a word that like people don't know what robots are, but these people believe in robots, and they believe in the first world called Aurora. And so they have a religion about that, and he's trying to get a hold of their Bible because he thinks that is where the history is going to be. Long story short, he violates some religious rules in trying to investigate in a temple. And once again, Haman has to come in and help him to flee. We'll talk a little bit about that in the spoiler section. Now they flee to the doll sector. And this is kind of the lower class sector of Trantor. And all the people are a little bit shorter, and they have real bushy mustaches. That's a big characteristic. They're really proudful of their mustaches. And they made Hairy Seldon's future partner, Hugo Amaral. So he's basically the person that co-creates Psychohistoria with him. And they also meet a gutter snipe from Billy Botten named Raish that Harry and Doris later will adopt. And so we see these are characters that we kind of see in the show, especially Raish. They completely change his character. I don't mind that they made him a personal color. Like, they never talk about their skin color in the book, but the fact that they didn't give him a bushy mustache, like, that is like the biggest thing about the book, is that they all have to have like the 80s stash. And that's like this, this whole area is that is like their key defining point of how you can tell a person's from the doll sector. And he doesn't have that. He's clean shaven. And I'm like, man, that's So while they're there, they meet an old CRY's person, Mother Rita, and she tells them that no, Earth was the original planet, but Aurora was the second planet. And so they kind of have Mycogens and the dolls have different interpretations of history. So he's there. They're once again finding themselves, Billy Botten, they're getting in a lot of trouble. These are no guns. These are all knife people, and they just like mugging people left and right. And they turn to Davian maybe for some help. He is kind of like a political figure, person for the people, revolutionary. He wants to take down Cleon the First. So he also wants the power, but they're up against the wall. And they see Demerzel coming in, so they agree to help him. However, he is working for the mayor of Y, and that is another political. This is someone whose line used to be the emperor, and they own one of the most powerful and critical sectors. So the emperor can't really touch them because they're needed, but kind of the strongest opponent to the emperor. And we find out that his daughter Rochelle is leading the resistance and is plotting to overthrow the emperor. And we have all this big drama. Like, it seems like this is where we are. We're gonna have to that. Where's Haman? Haman comes in and complete turnover, and that is as far as I can go before we get to the spoilers. But honestly, before we do that, really love this book. This is a great book. This is what should be adapted into a TV show. And there are so many points. If you are enjoying the TV show, if you're enjoying the Foundation kind of series, definitely check this book out, because there's a ton of lore and it's wonderfully narrated. Isaac Asimov, brilliant in what he contributed to the sci-fi community. So with that, it's time to get into
spoilers.
Okay, so now to the spoilers section. I want to say a big thank you to Ro from the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast for providing me with that clip there so I could have that little river song saying spoilers. But now we're going to get into kind of some of the bigger plot points of the book. So going back to when they were in the Mycogen Center, the Mycogens believe that they were originally from the planet Aurora, and that was the original birthplace of humans. And they worship robots, and they keep that secret. They have a hidden Bible that the outside world does not know. They're cultish about it, just like they're cultish about the whole non-hair thing. And they have a weird thing of, like, at one point they have one who's like being impure and wanting to feel their hair. It's real weird, but they have these temples, and in their Bible, it basically says that in these temples there's a robot priestess or something, and this is in a world where robots have been done away with. There are no robots, so it's kind of like Harry Sheldon's like, I need to know this robot, and he's so concerned and focused on it because he needs history as a model to see how history predicted things to come true, so that he can test out his model for predicting the future. And that's his big problem, is there isn't a good, accurate record of the past, so he can't predict the future. The big thing here is he thinks, well, if there's a robot would have a computer brain that would be able to tell him all the events perfectly. So he really wants to see this robot. So outsiders aren't allowed in the temples, and him and Doris decide to break in. And of course, they get in there, and women aren't allowed in it either. And they get in there, and the inner temple sanctorium, and they get confronted by some Master 14, the High Elder. And they have basically just committed sacrilege. They're gonna, the law states they got to be put to death. But at the same time, they're Imperials, so now he's like, well, that'll put me in problem with the Emperor. But the Emperor, he knows, wants Hairy Seldom dead, or so he believes. So he's like, well, I'll turn you over to the Emperor. I'll gain points with the Emperor, and I'll let him kill you. And since you're going to die, it will satisfy our needs. So that, they're going back and forth. But then Chester Hammond somehow knows they're in trouble. Arrives. Doris says she sent him a message. Sheldon doesn't know how she's able to do this, but he shows up and he starts talking to some Master 14, and basically convinces him to do things he doesn't want to. And he makes a comment about that. How come always when I'm doing trades with you, even when I go into negotiations 100% not wanting to do it, somehow you make me want to do it? And so they go off. So this is kind of the first clue. Next they go to the doll sector. And that's where they get, Mother Rita, and they learn that, no, Earth was the first planet, Aurora was the second planet, and there was a civil war because Aurora made robots and Earth didn't like robots. And there was a civil war about that. And that is basically the plot of the IRobot books. So another property, and this is... Originally, when Foundation was made, it was not intended to be part of iRobots. These were, you had Empire, Foundation, Robots. These were different series that Isaac Asimov, after Foundation really took off, he basically took all these other books and he tied them into the Foundation world from them point forward, because he made all these books kind of in rapid succession. Foundation was the one that took off. So here he's connecting it to that. And they have a point where they're surrounded by gangsters. And all of a sudden, Doris, who is a historian professor, and she keeps talking about how she's Harry Seldon's bodyguard. And there's one of the things that Harry Seldon is a twister, which is some sort of sport. And it gives him a fighting advantage because he's a twister. But he's always offended because Doris always wants to step in front and be his bodyguard. And he always takes offense to that. And with 2 knives, she basically demolishes this whole band of thugs. And like the worst part, she is in the baddest of bad neighborhoods. These are just the cutthroat guys that if tourists go in there, they get mugged and everything taken from them. Raped, killed, all that. And she just beats him up. To the point where, like, they start getting in trouble with the police. Like, they're having trouble believing that she was able to do this. And that's how, Raish ends up becoming their son, because he's so impressed. He's like, teach me how to fight it. But now we're seeing that there's something different about Doris. So now, fast forward to when they're captured in the Y sector. And the mayor of Y, his daughter, Rochelle, she has like this foolproof plan. Like, she's got all the wheels in motion. It seems impossible. There's no way Ito Demerzel is going to be able to stop her. She's going to overthrow Cleon the First. It's like this foolproof plan. And suddenly, the troops abandon her. They say that they won't follow a woman. Now, she's been leading this army. She's been taking over, hand-picked, hand-groomed, had no problem. And then Hammond shows up. She says, that's not Hammond, that's Ito Demerzel. You don't know what Ito Demerzel looks like? Hairy Seldom had never seen a picture of him. And she's completely shocked. And Harry's realizing the person he's been running from the whole time has been the person helping him run, which is Hammond. And so Ito Demerzel has been playing this chess game. And so Seldon, gotta stop that. I keep wanting to call him Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. Seldon realizes that Ito Demerzel / Chester Hammond is a robot. He is the robot that was fabled, that was told about, that looked almost indistinguishable from humans, and has the power that he read about in the Mycogen sector, that has the power to control people's minds and make them do things. And he says, well, it's not exactly like that. He can increase emotions, and he almost like a powerful, like imposing empath. So he can, if somebody wants to do something, he can push them. So like if you suggest something and a person was like, yeah, I would like to help you, but I really can't, he could push that to like, of course I'm going to help you. And so he can do that. Like, he's not direct mind controlling, but he can push that. So these men there that was following her, like, they had a little bit of like the sixth, like, we can't have a woman be our leader. There was a little bit of that, just a little bit, a hint in their thing. They'd always been ruled by a man. They're just a little hint. And he basically took that little teeny hint, and then he just kind of pushed it until it blew up into this thing with her troops. The same thing with Sunmaster 14. Like, he understood they were outsiders. He didn't, and he owed Chester a debt. He didn't want to kill them, but law required him to do it. But because he didn't want to do it, Chester was able to, push him to not do it, and to cover it up so that it never happened. And he reveals that his real name is R. Daniil Olivois, and the R stands for robot, and that is a character from the IRobot books. A character that Sonny from the Will Smith IRobot movie is slightly based on. Sonny is not a character in the books. He is a character that's like a composite of like 3 different characters from those books, just kind of rolled into one for a movie. But primarily, he is this character. So when you're watching Foundation and you're seeing the lady Ito Demerzel, she's actually, in the books, she is the main person helping Seldon, and she is that robot from the Will Smith movie. So that kind of like, open up the universe there for you. And it talks about the Zeroth Law, which is kind of what the iRobot movie put out, but it's better put here. So, like, the laws go like, there's 1, 2, 3, must not kill a human, this, and each one is like, well, outside of that, And so the last one's like a robot needs to protect itself, but the other laws are above it. Well, the 0th law is above that, and that is a robot must not harm humanity. So a robot can kill a human if it's in the benefit of humanity overall. And a robot can control a human, can push and do that if it's for the benefit of humanity. And so Ito Demerzel, the reason why he's not emperor is because he wants humans to make the decision. He's just doing a little guiding, a little helping mankind along. But he realizes that if he were to take over, he would overstep his bound of his program. He could go too far. But if he stays on the sidelines observing, and that's why he's so interested in psychohistory, because he doesn't know what's right to do. He's he's trying to guess, and he's been doing this for thousands of years, trying to guide humanity, and yet he sees everything is falling apart. The world is in decay. Much like our world. When you go to a big city like New York, and you have these giant skyscrapers of some of these mega corporations, and the sidewalk down below them is all busted up, and you're like, how is the money not getting to this? How is this so? And that's what's happening on this whole planet is like a giant mega city, and stuff's breaking down, stuff's out of repair, it's not working like it should be. It's just like any business that's been around forever. The mall where there's always that one elevator that's out of order, that kind of stuff. The money's just not there to fix it, and he's trying to figure out what's going to happen, because he realizes, as a robot and seeing human history, it's all going to collapse, but he doesn't know what to do. So maybe if I can get Hairy Seldom to develop psychohistory, I can figure it out. And so it really kind of goes in, but then they have the second bomb drop. Harry confronts Doris, and he says, well, you're a robot too. And she kind of, denies it, and he's like, no, you're able to communicate with Hummin without even speaking or that. You have some internal connection with him. And, your ability to fight and do this stuff beyond normal human strength, it's clear evidence that you're also a robot. And so they kind of go on that. Now, she becomes Seldon's wife. We'll talk about that in another book. But so it really kind of goes in and brings out how much involved robots are in all this, and how that is the stem of a lot of stuff in the Isaac Asimov greater universe. So this was a great book. Really definitely suggest people check out Prelude to Foundation. I think this is what Apple should have adapted. And we'll look at the other prequel book next. But once again, check this book out on Audible. Scott Brick does an amazing job reading it. And also, once again, thank you to Ro for giving me that little spoiler clip. I'm going to be using that in all these reviews going forward. And with that, we're calling it. I'll see you in the next video.